Okay. Brian, nice to meet you.
I've got something for you.
Oh, really? Gifts today? I don't have anything for you. It doesn't feel right. Maybe if I give you my best performance. Okay.
Hi, I'm Renata.
Okay, and your performance whether.
Oh, is that how we're rolling? Wow, this is what we call high stakes teaching. Nice. I perform a little bit better, I'm sure. But, well, it's not a matter of life or death, which is good. Thanks, you guys, for being patient. We're just, nice. Everyone get up for Matt. Matt, when's your session? You can preview your session. When's your session? Next session, everybody. Oh, that'd be great.
But you're leaving? I'm in the wrong room.
Oh, next time.
All right, we're gonna, we'll get things going here. Oh, and Darren, I don't think I have a clicker, so we're gonna have to use the mouse. Great. Well, thank you guys for showing up to this session. I'm gonna get things kicked off. What time does it sound like, Greg? We're actually supposed to 9 and 10.
So 10.
Oh, all right.
You got it?
All right.
You'll get sorted.
Tell a joke.
Be patient. It's not my virtue. I'm just ready. I'm ready. For those of us in the world who wake up at 5, I mean, this is like, it's like noon. I'm at noon.
I know it's not mine.
Sure. I probably don't need coffee in general.
Yeah. Well, your last name here, kind of international.
You like that?
International group.
You like that?
Yeah.
I like that we come off that way.
Good. Okay. Fully spread out. I'm trying to be antisocial.
We're trying to bring out prestige.
Nice stuff.
Yeah. We're selling prestige today.
Low bar.
We don't need bars anymore.
You don't need bars? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Complain, but is there a way to warm the room up just a little bit more?
Oh, sure.
Seems a little bit closer.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I got a sweater if you need it.
I mean, I got a nice warm cup of coffee.
As soon as we start speaking to hot air.
Well, I know that.
I'm waiting for
From
that
some
part.
people I know that want.
Oh, targeting.
That's only a
That
loop.
was a target, I swear. So, yeah, I went halfway for you. If not,
That's fine.
could maybe blow in
Yeah,
some of that warm
we'll be
Canadian
fine
air.
for a few minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Thinking of it Mexico.
Oh,
So it'll warm up before they get here.
yeah.
We don't care about that.
Yeah, we care about this group. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you guys again for showing up. I'm going to go ahead and start. Even though the name of this is, the name's changed several times, Darren and I, on a couple of occasions, have presented both collaborative work around what we like to call kind of learning ecosystem or learning architecture. And the reason for that simply is, within the context of learning, there's so many influencers that can impact your learner. In this particular case, our students in the classroom. And so we chose, when I saw that the chapter was only going to be 1,500 words or so, made it a lot more sense to take a key focus of that and really spotlight probably one of the most influential aspects of that, which we think is social. And so we'll talk a lot more about that, and Darren's going to spotlight what that is for social. My name's Ryan Gunhold. I know actually most of you, so thanks for, even after knowing me, still coming to my session. I've been teaching now here at City University for 11 years. I've been teaching for over 20. Scary to say that. I teach in Eric's division for the School of Technology, Informational Systems, and I'm getting a chance actually to teach for Greg as well, and I also teach on occasion in some MBA programs. I asked Darren to be here, partly because actually Darren and I are being asked to speak at a number of conferences coming up here, and Darren and I have the luxury of working with this gentleman, and the fact that I've met few people and far between who have a passion for seeing technology and learning come together like this man. And so he does that at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and one of the amazing things about that I see on most occasions is he has an insider view, both with his role that he leads at the foundation, but also in seeing how the Gates Foundation tries to impact learning through innovation. And in fact, they're having some of the largest breakthroughs they've ever had from ever before, even compared to business and corporations who are trying to innovate in that space. So I'll let Darren speak to that a little bit more. And that's what we're going to take you guys through today. So let me just give you guys a high-level agenda. I'm all about the state. I watched Enemy of the State last night too, just to bring it all in, you know. We'll talk about the current state of what's going on. In fact, Darren's going to talk about that, and probably one of the best persons I've ever heard speak about it. He spoke about that at ATD, DevLearn, others that I'll let him talk about, a lot of different places. I think we're in a wonderful state, actually, of that at City University, and actually hearing Aaron just speak to what the state is of our current learning systems. We have a wonderful opportunity, I think, at City University, and then I think when you put the learning model that we, and the academic model we've been using, that City University's been using forever, it's a wonderful opportunity for us, especially with our students, to make that work. We'll talk about what the social state is. I'll take you through a demo state, and then further consideration state meetings, things that you guys want to keep in mind if you're going to start integrating social into what you're doing with learning. Okay. So without further ado, I'll actually hand it over to Darren, who actually can speak to, and when you see the chapter published, the name of it actually is the Kaleidoscope of Learning. The reason I use that phrase is I've been looking forever for a really great visual that kind of explains what is the current state of learning for us right now, and I have found few and far between, in fact, none as great as this, and Darren has spoken to this and is going to right now.
Good question. Sure. When we talk social, are we going to get into cultural interaction, cultural interface, cultural awareness at all?
Yeah, we will. So we're not going to talk, well, I'll talk a little bit about that, but probably some of those we'll save for the Q&A. So if you guys have questions about that, so we'll go through the presentation and I'll kind of follow up on that. Let me reintroduce myself. Ryan did a great job of building me up, so I'm going to bring it back down to what I really do at the foundation. So I've been in learning and development for 20 plus years, and I've been at the Gates Foundation for 8 years. And my role is Senior Manager of Learning and Innovation Technologies. And so I work both internally with our internal customers. We have 1,300 full-time employees. About 1,000 of those are here in the United States, in Seattle specifically, and then we've got offices in Washington, D.C., London, China, India, and Ethiopia. So we're spread out and international organization, but kind of on a small scale. Prior to joining the foundation, I was a consultant for a few years and then worked at FedEx corporate offices managing all their technical training for North America. So long history in technology, long history in learning and development. As I said, I do a lot of work internally, but I also work with our grantees and partners. So when you talk about technology, how it's getting out there in the field, obviously a lot of you have probably heard of what we call our post-secondary success program. So we focus on technologies that will help people that are underprivileged usually, help them get into programs like CityU, make the most of it, right? So those are the kinds of things that we really want to focus on. Obviously, we've also got some big states in K-12 education. College readiness is part of that program as well. So I work with them on some of the technology aspects of those things. So things like flipped classroom that we started working on 5 or 6 years ago. I'm still very excited about that. what I think is interesting, Ryan kind of alluded to, is as I talk to other colleagues in the learning and development space, one of the things that I've noticed over the last 4 or 5 years is that universities and K-12 education are starting to take a leapfrog over most private organizations. So it's really interesting. I think that you guys are more on the cutting edge than a lot of our organizations are that I work with colleagues and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty fun and exciting to see. I think it's also a catalyst for organizations internally to take a closer look. So when Ryan says I speak at these conferences and stuff, a lot of them are not nonprofit. A lot of them are for-profit organizations, and they're like, you said that, and then you give a presentation on what some of these universities are doing, stuff like that. He goes, man, we're behind, we're way behind. We're 5 years behind. And I always kind of shake my head and go, yeah, we are. So good luck on catching up. So the current state of learning, and this is really, I think, a slice of the pie, so to speak. So the reason I always start off talks like this with this particular slide. So if you go to Bing, the conversation prison, if you Bing it, notice that I said Bing, not Google. I don't Google things, I Bing things, right? Conversation prison was created by David Solis about 5 or 6 years ago. The first iteration of this is about half the size. That was done about 4 years ago, and then he just updated this last year. And so it has grown exponentially in just a couple of years. That's one of the things I would say is that if you look this up online, look at the first iteration of this and look and see how much it's changed. The reason for that is pretty obvious, is that as we continue to grow as a society, and as the needs continue to grow to connect us virtually, there's more solutions out there. And so some of the things some of the things are fairly easy and you've heard before, right? So Facebook, LinkedIn, those kinds of things, YouTube. What I always look at is what are the emerging signals out there, right? What are the things that, especially our younger generation, so the millennials who are going to be 50% of the work population here in just the next couple of years, which is kind of mind-blowing. How do we approach them? How do we get them involved in, not just in the workforce, but I always look at it as like in education too, right? So you guys are preparing them to come to work for us, right, out there in the workforce. And so things that I keep an eye on, so things that are starting to get traction, stuff like that. So things like Flickr and Imager, Snapchat. Snapchat has really taken off over the last 6 to 8 months as being a really an interesting kind of way of communicating amongst millennials. And so it's one of those things where I look at it and I say, well, how could I integrate that into some of the things that we're doing, like in post-secondary success? What are some of those things that they're looking at that we can integrate those things into? So this whole conversation prism goes through all of these different social media or social platforms, and it really helps. And he does a really good job of explaining kind of each one of these things. Video, as you probably already know, is just really where it's at today as well. So not just the Instagram and Snapchats and stuff like that. It's really being able to get video out there quickly for people and able to crowdsource things. Speaking of crowdsourcing, that's another big one for people in the millennial generation. They really like to collaborate on things. But like we're sitting here in a room, and in a few minutes we're going to have a chat. They do that online with Google+. They do it online with like Mentor Mob and stuff like that. So they're solving problems and not being in the same room. So this kind of goes back to a comment we had earlier, is cultural diversity and stuff. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we can break down a lot of those barriers just by virtually communicating and talking with each other. The other thing I want to point out on this is that just utilizing these technologies doesn't really make you, their friend or their buddy in that space, right? That's the interesting thing. So how many of you have a Twitter account? You guys use it?
I haven't, I've never used it.
Yeah, me too. Right? Well, that's not true. So my LinkedIn account is connected to Twitter, so when I post something on LinkedIn, I go, oh, there's a Twitter thing. I don't even know if anybody reads it, right? And once in a while, I go and check my Twitter account, like, oh, crap, there's a bunch of followers. And I don't know. I'm like, but, so the interesting thing though is when I go to conferences, I kind of ramp up, do some tweeting and stuff like that, and then it kind of ramps back down. So, and I'm pretty honest and open with people about that, but if this was part of if I were building a curriculum and this was part of my solution, I would want to be more involved, even if it's something that I don't use on a personal basis, right? So I try to do like live tweets in some of my conference sessions. Those are really fun to do, except for when you get the comment of like, right? I only got that once. That was about 5 years ago when I started doing it, and I'm like,
140.
crap, you know, and it's why like, yeah, only 140 characters. Where's the next one? Pop up quick, right? So that's, you know, it's that balancing act of, you know, what do you find interesting yourself, but what do your students, your attendees, learners find interesting? And again, balancing that, you know, like for example, I'm not going to get on Snapchat, but I know that, like for example, my nephew in school, they use it for project-based learning. So they use it a lot, and so his teachers really enjoy it. I've had several conversations with teachers that are using these technologies specifically for their students and for getting them involved. The last thing I'll kind of point out on this slide is again, it's just knowing how social works. There's a couple of platforms out there. One is called Clout, and the other one's called Cred. The reason I bring those up is kind of your e-learning expert talks about badges, right? And I think it's an interesting point right now in learning is where is gamification going? Where's badging going? So you got Mozilla badges and stuff like that. And I'm not here to predict anything one way or the other. I do think that there's some kind of badgification that's going to continue on, and I think it could continue from the university model into your workplace and grow and follow you through your career. I think that's a possibility, and especially when you've got Experience API and stuff, those kinds of things. Technology allows us to do those sort of things. But one of the things that millennials are looking at now, even people in Generation Y are looking at cloud and cred, because what those allow you to do is look at your social platforms that you're involved in, and it gives you a score. So, you know, they're all about like, hey, I've got this many likes on Facebook, you know, this many friends follow me, blah, blah, blah. Cloud and cred are a big deal, especially when you're starting to talk about, you know, hey, you know, especially if you got people that are active in politics, active in local communities and stuff like that, they're really looking at those things today. So that's their own form of kind of badging. And they're going, hey, my cloud score is this. And they don't always share it with everybody, but it's an internal thing. So having that awareness that they're using those kinds of things is a pretty big deal, I think. It's something you guys should keep in mind as you're looking at these new technologies. And Blackboard's a great system. I've used it over the years in different engagements, but being able to integrate some of those things, I think, is big. So that's a little bit about where the current state is, what we're looking at. I could go on for a long, long time about some of the other things we're working on at the foundation, or things that I see, but we wanted to kind of set that as the baseline, where we think social is going.
Thanks, Darren. I actually think we could skim through this, but I'll just make note of it, because actually this is coming right off of Aaron speaking in that last session, all planned, by the way. But I think the key things that I've seen, especially with online learning and even blended learning, and in fact, I'm sure you guys do the same thing. Actually, my in-class sessions that are supplemented with the online, that's where there's some magic happening. I don't know if you guys see that, but that's where what I say, what they see me demo, if I go out and find a video, like we just saw in there, that supplements what we just said, and they get that within another context, we're helping them frame learning better, okay? And especially with our students, I think the average student in my class, the age has kind of dropped by 10 to maybe even 20 years in some of my classes. And I've been privileged enough where Eric has shipped me off to China on occasion. And I'm saying everything I'm saying, but when I show our Chinese students a video of what that is, the connection's like made, right? And it's like it's solidified for them. So, and that helps a ton, because now that we've kind of made that connection, we have the opportunity, I feel like, to increase collaboration together. So now that we can actually talk on something that everybody understands, the collaboration greatly increases. And I've seen this over and over and over again. So in using the China example, there's so many times that we've talked about a concept, I've even whiteboarded it, we've even gone into a lab and demoed it, but it didn't have the same impact as if I, again, shared a video within, say, even within context of their culture and how they see it happening, and then allow them to collaborate around it. It increased collaboration like tenfold in my classes.
So you have flexibility?
Yeah, yeah.
That's really.
It's key,
That's
right?
key.
Because not everyone gets everything on the moment. Sometimes we have to digest it a little bit to get it. So it gives them yet another layer to associate with. And then I think we're so fortunate with this asynchronous, synchronous thing, you know, because we can lay some of the foundation out in that synchronization learning, and whether it's in class or even on the online learning platform, as long as we get an opportunity to bring everyone together and get them on the same page, the asynchronous part continues to supplement, right? It kind of continues to reinforce that conversation, allow for them to associate with it. And I think that one of the biggest things about it is also just a commitment to a learning routine. So we have, again, I think we're very fortunate with Blackboard to be able to, you know, the online learning teaches you different habits, right, than the face-to-face class. And it teaches you actually, I think, personally, to be far more disciplined about learning, meaning looking ahead for the week, understand what's coming, planning in advance for that. Whereas the in-class session, you go to the class and the teacher's kind of spoon-feeding you, or the instructor's spoon-feeding you a lot of that information, right? Or walking you through that information. So a lot more of it is a commitment to a learning routine on your own. And that's an opportunity that I'll talk about in a second here. And I think that therefore leads for us to have greater opportunities to have integration of media in all kinds of different circumstances. Whether that's when we post that announcement at the start of the week, that's again maybe providing an overview of a video that they can associate with, or posting it even into the discussion board, or asking them to integrate that into a project that they're working on. On a couple of my more recent projects, instead of just saying go out and find 5 to 7 references, I actually required a couple of them to be video in nature, okay, and insert them into their actual papers or their presentations, depending on what they were putting together for the project. Darren, do you want to speak to this one?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So I kind of alluded to a couple of these
Yeah.
previously, but I do want to point out a couple of things here. So it's what the kids are using these days, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, duh, right? It's like, yeah, I get it. This is what the kids are using. The one thing I would say about this, though, is this isn't new, right? People learn from each other all the time. This is how learning has happened forever, right? All we're saying is that we're learning from each other on a different medium. So we as educators need to understand that and need to figure that out, right? They're looking to us to say, how do we do this in a way that continues our education? And it's not just in City University, it's going to continue throughout the rest of their lives. And so when it says these are what the kids are using, it is. It's not MySpace from 10 years ago, right? Everybody was friends with Todd from MySpace, right, the founder. This is the new way of doing business, right? And the interesting thing, several studies have shown this, is that when you look at the Gen Xers, you look at the millennials and stuff like that, it's not that they don't want those personal relationships. They build those personal relationships, but so if I meet someone, so let's say Susan, you and I meet over coffee or something like that, but we're millennials, we'll have a coffee, and we'll do that maybe once a month, but then we're texting back and forth, right? So we're actually creating that relationship and saying, hey, did you get that, from Professor Mike, blah, blah, blah. So we're actually doing those kinds of things, just like we used to do. Again, it's just a different modality. And I get it, trust me, I get it. I have a daughter who's 26 years old, I go to dinner with her and she's doing this. I'm like, there are times to set that thing down and have a face-to-face conversation, and then there are times where I want her to pick that thing up and say, hey, you know what, Dad, I've got a leaky faucet. I'm like, have you Googled it? Because otherwise I'll come to, There you go. See, that was a test. Good job. Yeah. So and she goes, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that real quick, and then I'll call you back. And she usually calls me back anyway, so she doesn't really want to get her hands dirty. The other thing, as we've talked about before, enhances the learning environment. Obviously it's really about collaboration, right? It's being able to bring these things, and I don't think it should be just outside of the classroom. I think we should be doing these things inside classrooms. In fact, you see a lot of these students are saying, how do we get interactive? And how do we build projects, on an iPad or something like that? So those kinds of things I think are really interesting. And we're still trying to figure out how to use some of this technology a little bit better in class without losing control. I think it's worse in the K-12 education. You have to lock down the tablets a little bit more so they're not, doing other stuff. And then we'll do a little bit more of this in the Q&A, but bridges diversity, and this is where I think it's not just diversity as in the United States, black and white and Asian and stuff like that. It's cultural diversity, right? I mean, Stanford does a MOOC and it's got 150,000 students in there, right? Those are not from America, right? In fact, I think it was something like 70% of those students were outside of North America, all right? Now, the interesting thing I think about this, and this is one of the things I think we could do better as educators, is we need to build in our own cultural diversity and cultural sensitivity. So it's that inclusion and diversity kind of things that we see at the corporate level. We need to start a little bit farther down the chain. And we need to talk to people about what are the things that you want to post online, how do you want to post them, understanding that our students are international. We guys have a lot of international students here, I know. And so even though they're here in the United States, they've got a lot of cultural background, right, that they're bringing with them. And we need to explore that with our students. And I think it should be, in my opinion, and as I talk to my colleagues in college readiness and some of the other programs, that's one of the deficits they see is how do we prepare them to talk outside of their social and economic background. And so just spending a half hour, an hour on that can be a big deal. Because as you know, if you're not culturally sensitive to someone, you can turn them off really quick. So there's some really interesting ideas on how to do that. There's lots of good learning around that. One of the things I would mention is Jane McGonigal. Anybody heard of her? She's got a brilliant TED Talk. So she's got a PhD in gaming education. Just an amazing person. Met her a couple years ago. And one of the things she talks about is how to solve the world's problems through games. And one of those things is how do we solve this kind of global diversity, this flattened world that we're in, and doing it in a gaming environment, which I think is really fascinating to be able to do that. So first player games like Minecraft and all that, but taking it to a different level and saying, hey, maybe we could solve some of the world's problems by doing this, and again, trying to collaborate on these things. So good TED Talk if you want to look at that.
Great, thanks, sir. I think one of the first phrases both in my abstract and the start of the paper that's leading this off is, and again, the reason I use that kaleidoscope image is the choices are endless right now. Right? And it's like, even if we finally got on top of them, there'd be 10 more tomorrow to take its place, right? And so the aspect for me that's been, I guess, semi-fun about this is exploration, right? Trying something new, I feel like, every single term. And again, just to point out, in working with Eric in the Technology Institute is, they're always throwing out a challenge for us, right? This term, try this, right? And that's also being supplemented in a lot of what I see what the library team's doing and faculty development's doing continuously as well. And anyone throws out a challenge for me, I'm all over it. So I think that's great. But there's a challenge in that, isn't there? Because it's like with so many choices, it's like the Cheesecake Factory, right? That menu is 40 pages, right? And I do it every time. I'll still look through all of them just because I'm like, wow, that's unbelievable, the choices here.
It's 40 pages.
And then what, right. And I still order the same thing, Caesar salad, every single time. All right. So I go with what works with my teaching style. And I think that's one of the primary things I want to leave you. That if there's nothing else you guys get out today, Darren and I could spend hours with you theorizing like all the future of learning and where this is all headed. But in regards to social, if you want to land social well with your students, it's going to be about really just smart planning in advance, trying something that you feel comfortable with, okay, that they can associate to. So I'm going to show you just some of those basic tools here in a second. I personally, well, the ones that have had the greatest impact in my teaching have been these four, okay? Videos. I don't think there's any question anymore the impact of videos. Again, I mentioned I teach for MBA, I teach for Jody. In some of her most recent classes, almost all the course modules, as they're showing up in her resources, they're only videos. And I'm like, I don't think they need more reading. I really don't. They need contextual learning going around them to get deeper into the conversations we're having. Then, if they want to go out and make a project or a paper, give me some resources. Go out and now look for resources that are going to supplement what you're thinking for us, okay? That's the real value, at least to me. In addition to that, I got a video going in the back. That's just constant in my world now. Video here, video there. It's almost driving Darren crazy. I'm sending out videos all the time. I use another tool called JibJab. You guys ever see that? If you're really good, we'll leave you with the JibJab today. And with Darren and I in one. Yeah, exactly. But I love videos because everyone people will spend 2 to 3 minutes to watch a video. They won't spend 2 to 3 minutes diving into reading, right? You've got to chunk that stuff out. They will spend a little bit of time associating with that. The other big thing is this doc sharing tools. And then here's the other nice part. Within Blackboard, and Aaron just mentioned it, there's a lot of experience API stuff that's being filtered in. So now I can actually search for terms within Blackboard, and it will give you top choices for videos, what I call doc sharing tools or collaboration tools that you can then link into the course, and I'll show you that in a second. Which I thought, when I saw that, I was like, oh, there's another session later today this gentleman's talking about, I think, mashups. That's the whole context behind that. But anyways, that's fabulous. Because now, instead of you guys having to go, that was the other thing that always took time, right, as an instructor. I gotta go out and find the right one. Well, not anymore. Okay, because you can type in keywords for what you're looking for, and you're gonna get 10 choices.
I went into Blackboard yesterday, and I was so, wow, and I was working on something, and I went back a little bit later. The last thing that I had just updated was in there.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I thought, wow,
It's amazing.
it's neat.
But these in general also have helped my students in regards to with a lot of the projects that are going on or we require of them. They can actually see samples of not only what other students have done, but I've honestly asked a lot of my students to share, would you be willing to share that as a future student sample for other classmates so they can have a framework of learning to build their project from.
Hey Ryan, can I add something?
Yeah.
So just to throw this in there around document sharing tools is, one of the things that we've seen with some of the schools that we work with is when we implement document sharing tools, the great thing about the searchability, so you add metadata tags and stuff like that, is that when students search for things, it doesn't always come up with things that are from that particular curriculum, for example, right? But that's the great thing about it, is that they get nuggets from other curriculum, they're like, oh, this is how it applies to what I'm thinking about here. So if you're in economics and you get something that that was very similar in history, it's like, God, wouldn't that be great to be able to surface those things instead of having to go ask a professor about these things. So that's the cool thing about it, is it gives them lots of relevant information in context, but it doesn't have to be exactly within that particular subject, right? So, but you have to have good filtering tools to do that. It's a double-edged sword, because if you don't have good filtering tools, then it becomes just a big mashup of everything. So in Blackboard, I know I have some pretty good filtering tools, especially with the next release I have.
Yeah. Thanks, sir. On top of that, of course, if we have the online classes, we have, I say collaborate, right. So Collaborate's there for us. I find though, then, my requirement there, so tell me if I'm wrong here, Stu, but my requirement then there is, do I have to set up the class if my students want to meet online through Collaborate just themselves? Do I have to set that up, or can they go straight into Blackboard and start a session for themselves?
They can start it for themselves. It's integrated with all courses.
Okay.
But what we ask is that we ask the course managers to make sure the button or the link
Yeah.
on the left is there for them.
Okay.
Because that gives them a 24/7 room to use.
Got it. Well, I've given those instructions to my students, and I've even walked them through it, but I think they had challenges in setting it up. Either one, because maybe they didn't. One of the things I've learned is you need to go out and install a couple of things with Collaborate ahead of time. And some of my students hadn't done that, and then they got lost. And so one of the things that I've seen that they have, even without me even asking, is they're on Skype or they're in Google Hangouts, right? Free services tools where they can actually meet and start sharing information together and be able to actually see the document as they're editing, right? So they're actually working on the document as they're going through it. Or see each other visually in person, which is pretty amazing, right? No matter where they are on the planet. And I know several of my teams have used those tools, and I'm promoting those tools more than ever. They're free, so just kind of makes sense, right? And that is happening more and more in the online environment again, and working with Darren on a couple of collaborative projects because we work in Microsoft type of environments. We have Link that does that, I know. Most of you at City University just got upgraded, and I can see all of you on Link as well if you guys wanted to use that tool. But collaboration tools are on the rise, okay? I think we're all in agreement there. And then last but not least, I give my students some community tools, and actually this was an idea I got a couple of years out of actually one of Eric's presentations at one of these conference presentations was professional groups and the value we actually get out of professional groups. So, you know, LinkedIn has those groups that you can join, et cetera, to either throw out questions to or get information. I mean, it's extremely invaluable for a lot of our students. Many of them are not on LinkedIn, just in general, which by the way, probably is one of the most valuable things that if you want to take 10 to 15 minutes for your students, just show them what it is and how to set it up, just so they can be on it, okay? Because in the work world, that's one of the most valuable tools you have as a professional to look for a job and to find and network with people. And so I encourage my students to use at least once during the course of the term one of these community tools. And there's a lot more than that, as you saw from that Kaleidoscope. One of the outcomes of this session is you guys will have that list, that kaleidoscope of all the different things that you can actually use if you want to try those out. Other things, I'd love to hear from actually you guys. Other things
I
that
found
you...
Collaborate to be a little awkward to use.
Okay.
I was using WebEx for my synchronous type things.
Okay.
For when I was a strayer, and to move over to Collaborate, it was like, it was
Yeah.
it was painful.
Okay.
When did you do that?
This is 4 years ago.
Yeah. Collaborate's changed a lot in the last year.
It has.
Yeah, just since January, and that's one reason that if we can have that link on the left side, on the left nav, we provide students a little quick instruction of how to get started,
Yeah.
and it's pretty seamless.
They can get
Much
it real easy now.
Real easy.
It's a lot
and
easier.
It's a link that is on the.
Not only that, but I sent you this information too, I think, Sue. I held a couple of, I try to hold an online session even on my online classes where we have one session where we at least sync up at least once a term.
Yes.
And what was great is after it was recorded, normally what I was having to do with things like WebEx is then you got to record it, and then I had to upload the recording into the class. What Collaborate actually does is it captures a link of the recording so they can still watch it within Blackboard without having to download an 80 megabyte file, for example. So just to your point, and that's when the last time I did that and it worked really well, I sent you that message. I was like, thank you. And it wasn't the first couple of times for me, because again, I didn't download, I wasn't ready. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about, that Darren's going to talk about here in a second, is things to be wary of when you're choosing to go down this path. There's things to be wary of. If you want things to work just like that for you, you got to do some planning in advance if it's going to work for you. Okay?
Unless you're using an Apple device. Then it just works.
then everything just works, right?
Very limited
Thanks,
context.
Darren. Thanks.
May I add?
Oh, yeah, please, Darren.
One
Yeah.
thing on Collaborate, and one use for Collaborate that we found really to be wonderfully excellent is we've been doing all of our master's thesis presentations in a Collaborate environment. And it's really great because sometimes we'll have the student here, and we use this room very frequently, presenting here in this room. and then have people from all around the world watching it on the Collaborate session. Sometimes we'll have this room and we'll have a bunch of people in here, and the student is somewhere else in the world presenting on Collaborate, and maybe there's a couple other people plugging in. And it just makes to where it's been a really great environment for doing that kind of a thing, which, you know, traditionally, the only way it's been done is a student standing in front of a room full of people, and it just has really added and made it a lot easier to do, especially with our students that are scattered all over the world. So.
You can even bring in alum for that. My grad school every year has the master's presentations and exhibitions, and then all the alum are invited ahead of time, the week before, and given the link to the session, and we all come in, and you can post questions in the chat, and then query the presenter.
Yeah, we invite quite a few outsiders
It really
as
extends
well.
the network for
Yeah.
the learners.
Thanks, everybody. Anything else that's working well in your class? Mike, you're always doing something new like this. Have you tried any of these? Success?
I have dabbled in quite a few of them. Sue knows that I've used Collaborate with success, and more recently than in the past. Collaborate really has improved recently. One of my observations in exploring multiple platforms for multiple purposes is that it's really helpful, especially for students, if you can actually land on a common core of platforms so that they can use those platforms frequently, become familiar with them, become good at them, and minimize their own connection problems and quality problems, and take maximum advantage of those features. So it's really good up front to establish what those platforms are when you're dealing with a class or cohort of students, and to make sure that everybody up front is able to connect, able to, they know what your expectations are for using that particular platform, and then you can focus on actually getting the benefit from engaging in those ways as opposed to dealing with the technology.
Okay.
I would add
Thanks,
to that, if I can add to that, I mean, one of the things, my grandfather used to teach at the University of Las Vegas, and I always wanted to go there. Vegas. But I always said, I want to go to the grandma talk, but it was interesting because he would always talk to me about how long it took him to put a syllabus together and all that, and I liken this kind of thing to, you got to get your technology ready, right? So you're building your curriculum and stuff like that. Add this into that time, right? To make sure that, that Blackboard's working, that Collaborate's working, if you're using, Google Hangouts and stuff like that. Make sure that those are working for you right, and then include your students in those things. Say, hey, these are the 4 or 5 technologies we're going to use in this class. So let's make sure that you're set up before the first session. Give them some help. Build it into into your setup, and it's one of those things. It gets easier as you do it. Technology's getting better, And the joke is that it just works on Apple. Windows is coming along. They're getting there, right? Sometimes it just works on Windows too.
A couple more years, they'll be right there with everybody. Look out. And they're not going out of business. I want to take a second to actually show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So it's great to talk about all these things. I don't feel like I help you if I don't kind of demo some of that and actually prove to you that I walk the walk and talk the talk. Okay. Craig made sure of that years ago with me. So a couple of things that I love more than anything. If I could give you a recommendation on a couple of things, it's again the videos. Like again, you might have the luxury of having a class where that's already all in there, for example. And I'll share an example here of what I'm talking about. Jody and I have worked for a while on putting some of these videos in here. But now when I go in to teach, by the way, I just gotta say, just as an instructor / faculty member, my favorite thing when I go into a course, when I start a whole new course, is if there's actual content there, right? I mean, nothing has been more scary to me when, hey Ray, how would you like to teach? And then I go into the course and I'm like, well, I'm not just teaching it. It looks like I'll be building it too. But needless to say, Because again, after I know you guys get a chance to work with good faculty for a while, oh, looks like they're not.
This is what, oh, there we go, see,
Yeah.
it was empty. It's called a template.
Yeah.
Here's the content.
So what I love more than anything now is I will actually, and I never did this from before, and I think it was just, maybe it's the fact that I get tired of browsing, skimming, reading all the time. But 2 or 3 of these in any course module that hit with your students, that's a hit every time. Yeah, these are all here, but I'm taking note when I'm going through this. I mean, Michael on this one, total hit on how to use business case sustainability to solve social problems. Phenomenal presentation. Students really only need to watch the first 5 of it. They watch it with me actually in class to set the tone for, here's what we're going to talk about today. Boom, sets the tone for the whole class. What is this really like? That class was also then followed up by a guest speaker. That's part of also why Darren's here. He makes this presentation a lot better, right? Because he brings in work world connotation and diversifies that, et cetera, et cetera. But to be able to play off of something like that in your class is wonderful. It's really wonderful. And here's how I've learned to even supplement it. You ever have those students who, first couple of weeks, they think the discussion board is kind of like a, maybe I will, maybe I won't, right, type of thing. And then by week 10, they're like, oh, so can I go back and do that learning from before? And what I used to say as an instructor is, well, I treat my teaching like the real work world, and if you don't show up to work, you don't get paid. So this is kind of like your lesson. I've learned that was great. It's great thinking from like the 50s. However, we're like living in the 2010s, right? And the reality is they can still learn. Learning is a continuous process, right? And so my new thing is, I say if you want to contribute to our videos for those weeks that you missed, please answer the discussion question. That's important, right? That you're getting an opportunity to associate with that. But I think you can now go back and actually add some videos to this library. And we want ones that are better than the ones there, right? So I found a way to incorporate that in my class for the students to get some credit, even though they somehow thought the discussion board was just going to take care of itself for a couple weeks. And that's been magical because it's adding content constantly here. And that's the key to this is fresh, new ideas and content that you're trying out with your students on a regular basis. And now that's almost like self-sustainable for me because there's 1 or 2 in every class, isn't there? And they end up being my content developers later on, okay? So that's number 1. Number 2 is all this emphasis on, because now I've gone in it, it's going to be at the top, right? I can't get to it from this other side, so can you fix this for me later on? So, my new thing to start off every week is this, right? We're all being asked to like post an announcement. My new thing is, post a video. And now she's saying I could do a video announcement every time. Look out. Because my new thing now is, blah, 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 blah. This is what this is. This is Snoopy. Okay? They don't hear it, but they watch this. And I can prove it by the clicks of what people are actually looking. They didn't go to the course module. They clicked on the video, okay, to explain what it is that we're learning for this week. Well, this particular week, on the very end of this comprehensive exam for this class, is for them to put together a game show template, my way of putting in gamification. And they have to put together a question from each one of the weeks that they had a module from, and then they test the rest of the class. It ends up being like a game show, right? Fun, fun, fun. But I got more clicks on this video than anything else in the whole course, the whole term, okay? And I'm doing it every week, okay? And I'm asking them to do it every week, okay? And it's just adding more and more content to my class, okay? Which is fantastic, because I'm not saying they have to. They are. They're willing to watch these things more than they are to listen to me talk. And on top of that, like I just mentioned from before, the other thing that I'm adding more than anything else is our slide shares. We can add slide shares into our announcements now as well, and especially for project weeks. And the reason I say that, if you've never seen this tool from before, all these are is uploaded presentations. Okay? You can search for any topic, anywhere, anytime, and Darren and I do this constantly, where we say, where's a good model of what we want for social learning? Well, here's probably a couple in here, right, that I can at least share with the students. We can find projects on here. And again, this is where I load a number of my student samples that they are willing to share into my own SlideShare. It's kind of like my own instructor library after a while. Okay? Those two alone you can embed in every single one of our courses. Okay? Simply just by going into the announcement.
So Brian, you are living crowdsourcing. Very good.
I know. Well, Darren would tell you that. It got hard being everywhere, right? So I've learned that if I can create that same type of learning everywhere else, then it's still happening.
Right. Can I add one more tool?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know whether this is, you can integrate this in the Blackboard. I think they should, if it can. But you guys heard of NetVibes? So
Yeah.
NetVibes is it was built as a news aggregator, but you can aggregate lots of different things. I'll give you an example. So Stanford's using this in their Earth Sciences course, and we're talking about tsunamis and earthquakes and stuff like that. And so one of the things that they do is they built this NetVibes. It's really actually easy to do. You go to netvibes.com, and you can build it as a public or a private session. It's free. And you go out and aggregate all the news around tags. So in this case, tsunamis, earthquakes, analysis, and stuff like that. And basically what it is just an aggregate of USA Today, journals that come out of the scientific community, all in one place. So the students can go there, do their research on different topics. In this case, like I said, Earth Sciences, come back to the class and have lots of good information to get back on what's happening today, right? So, or some historical data. It's a really, really cool tool that we see a lot of educators starting to use.
Thanks, sir. So I see we only have 2 minutes, so if you guys didn't see how I got here, there is literally what's called a mashup tools, and again, I haven't previewed what this other gentleman is presenting on, but I would, if this is sounding interesting to you, I'd highly recommend it. I'm sure he's using this mashup tool basically, and just like I shared with you, it's as simple as clicking on it, and I now have an opportunity to select something that gets automatically embedded into my post.
This text editor is in every place that you have.
Everything.
You can write Blackboard.
Absolutely everything.
There was one place with the choose your projects, and everybody chooses a different
Yeah.
project. And that week, I look at their project and find the video. I
Isn't it?
reply to the video.
Outstanding.
I know, it's amazing. My new thing to do is I'm not actually even writing words, I'm responding with videos and slide shares.
Or two tabs.
That, one of the things.
Videos and slide shares, I won't even respond anymore. Game show bloopers response. Sorry.
One of the things I want to point out is, his bloopers thing, and don't just use academic material.
Yeah.
For example, we have a course that's a programming in Python course. Every single module has a Monty Python sketch in it. It's as relevant as we can to make it to that particular module, but it gets students engaged when they have something more lighthearted to play with in the course than just having the pure academic stuff.
Thanks.
The funny thing about this is I remember when I started my MBA program, I didn't even know what email was because we never used it on
Yeah.
the computer, and how that kind of progressed to where we are today, and some of us are still trying to pull ourselves into the 21st and 22nd century.
Well, I've said this for years. I mean, I think the thing that remains one of the most attractive things to work at City University for is that we're trying these innovative techniques. I mean, and we're not saying that we're perfecting it, but we're doing everything we can to make that possible for our students, And so I think, again, that's one of the wonderful things we have as instructors and faculty members, and that's what I would certainly leave you guys with today is try something this next term that you haven't tried from before that integrates some of these social aspects. Don't need to perfect it, but try something in advance and plan for it. It will have a big impact, okay? It will have a big impact. Yeah.
I am in the middle. I'm obsessed with this whole thing of blindness, blind spots, and diversity. Well, one of the charts said version to diversity, and reality is, as I see it, and I'm experiencing it, and my students are bringing to me, is that unless we have a way of using our diversity to recognize our areas of blindness, we're not gonna be able to see the whole picture, and they're not gonna be able to make the type of decisions and do the things that they need to do. And
Great.
we need diversity. We don't,
No, we do.
we don't just bridge to it. We gotta have it, or we're gonna be out, someone else will be in our place.
Agreed. Well, and that was a huge bridge for just learning for me in general, even especially with the Chinese students. They don't have, if you've ever been to China, everything in the Western Hemisphere is blocked. Any of the social media is blocked. They hear about perceptions of what it's like in the Western world. They know the Michael Jacksons of the world, but they don't have any association with it. And so when you show up on scene with the Western world perspective for them, actually that's why we're there at City University. I mean, that's why we're there, right, Eric? I mean, they want an American type of knowledge with stuff. So I couldn't agree with you more. Social can help you bridge that faster than anything else. Hi, come on in. I know why you're here. So last couple points I'll say, and Darren, you can reiterate the points, and actually these are Darren's points. Things to consider for implementation. You want to consider privacy, because if you don't have single sign-on access to some of these, you're asking students to share, you want to keep that in mind, okay? Because there is a privacy piece to this. Have some working knowledge of the tool. So again, plan a little bit in advance if you're going to use this tool, and if you're going to put it into your class, try it a little bit more in advance, and just try little things. Okay? That's all you got to do. After a while, you'll be using it more and more. And I think actually Eric began speaking to this a lot more, is what I call good social placement. So sometimes, like that game show bloopers one, if you search for game show bloopers, there's like 20. There's about 10 of them that aren't really appropriate. Okay, so just be careful. Understand where the placement is for your stuff and what's being said about it, and be careful about what obviously is being said. You never know this social stuff can offend people, right? It can be offensive to people because it's exposing them to things that they may have never heard of from before, or even aware that's even out there. Okay. The presentation is leaving you with two links, and I think that the two most favorable that I picked out of the whole entire book. This one is an outline of the 25 best publications in the last 20 years on social learning. I've never found a better link, and I've been looking for years. And then one that Darren really turned me on is how this is just going to impact our future. So Darren and I are actually going on lots of talks like this that are relevant to the future of learning and how it's going to be impacted by that. And this is an absolutely outstanding book that sets the tone for that. And then last but not least, you guys will see in this is, this is just where we're headed, right? This is where we're going. This is where the future of learning is going. And I don't care if it's the Gates Foundation, Microsoft Across the Bridge, or City University. This is where we're all headed, okay? And I talked about this from the start, why it's actually so important. And I'll leave you with this. And actually this is, I feel like Darren and I are on a mission right now. We got formal learning down, don't we? Face-to-face class, we know how people learn more than ever. It's this informal learning part, okay, that we don't. And it's emerging right now. And if we all of us here, we're creating that world now, okay? And so I think that's exciting. I appreciate getting the chance to share just, again, one small aspect of what that can actually be for you guys.
And if you're interested in that, my session starts in 5 minutes.
Perfect, Frank!
I'm on the fly.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
Great meeting, Frank.
Yeah.
As always. As always.
You
Okay,
know,
sorry.
as I'm watching this, remember
Thank you.
we were talking about the
Well, they're all online.
collaborative
Yep.
and the reflective pieces
You're
there.
welcome.
I don't know if you
Thanks.
coined that or if you pulled that. That's what my whole chapter's about. So if I could give you credit for that, I want to, not to, I'd love to. Could that just come out of our conversation?
I don't remember going on.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna, at least somewhere, I need to add that.
Thanks, you guys.
Came out of a conversation.
Everything today that's being discussed in all of these today is sort of
And I was playing with this.
Yeah.
It's not so much the workplace to it, as we go back to the institution. As I look at Medieval University, right?
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, I need my.
Oh, you're up next.
I am.
In this room.
I am, that's
At
right.
least return the favor. Do you want to be recorded or blogged? You're good?
Recording would be great. I can,
Okay, great.
I'd reflect on my
Sure.
performance.
That's perfect. I mean, that's a
Now,
huge part of it.
If you do record him, that's what, we can put that with the presentation that Darren's on.